So if you want to get into your top university and have your admission officer drool after reading your application, this is what you need to be doing depending on where in that high school journey you're at, because the priorities change, right? When you're in grade 9, what you need to be focusing on to get into that top university is different than in grade 10, which is different than in grade 11, and so on. If you don't know who I am, my name is Joaquin Revello. I got a perfect 45 in the IB Diploma, and I'm a current student at the Wharton-Penn dual degree engineering school, known as the M&T program. All right, so in this video, I'm gonna be talking about exactly, depending on where you're at in your high school phases, what you should be focusing on, what you should be spending your time on. That way you get the highest possibility, the highest percentage chance of you getting accepted into your top university. So welcome Grizzlies, welcome Cubs. As I like to talk about in all of these videos, remember that productivity has less to do with how efficiently you do something and more to do with what you choose to do with your time. So let's talk about choosing what we do with our time. So essentially you can think of your entire university admission success journey as that of a rocket ship. You essentially want to launch towards your dream university. Right, whether that's Harvard, MIT, UPenn, Dartmouth, whatever dream university you want to go to, the way you want to think about approaching that success target is through the lens of building a rocket ship, right? Building a rocket launch pad for you to shoot off into your dream university. Okay, so that's the metaphor that I'm going to be working on in this video right here. All right, and a lot of the things that we're going to be covering in this video are all those insider baseball tactics. All right, what are those small things that you can do when you throw the ball, baseball analogy? What are those small tweaks that can ultimately have a hugely profound difference on your success rate? All right, so we're going to be covering what I call seasons. So there's 7 big seasons that you want to be focusing on. The first is before your grade 9, when you're in grade 9 to 10, grade 11 to the first half of grade 11, then the second half of grade 11 to the end of grade 11, grade 11 summer, grade 11 or grade 12 first half, and then grade 12 second half. Now, if you're, let's say, a little bit later, let's say you're in grade 11, when I go through all these seasons, like grade 9 and grade 10, if you're in grade 11, ask yourself, what may I be missing that I didn't cover or I didn't focus fully on in grade 9 and 10? Because that itself could become a bottleneck to your success in applying to these top universities. So ask yourself all the time, what may you be missing? All right, so let's talk about the first season, which is before grade 9. Before grade 9, if you look at it from this rocket analogy, your one goal is to find where the launch pad is going to be. Where are you going to shoot off into space? There's many different locations that you can pick on the map. Your goal is to pick the one that is going to be the best. So your one goal here is to choose what spot on the map you're going to shoot off of. In other words, to discover your extracurriculars. I like to call these ECs, short for extracurriculars. You also want to discover what I like to call your wow factor, which is the one thing that's going to have the most profound difference on your university success life. Now, the biggest thing about grade 9 and before grade 9 is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the things that you don't like. You don't know the things that you like. You don't know the tasks that you're quote unquote most passionate about. Okay, you don't know what those are. And you also don't know the tasks that you don't know about. Your main objective in grade 9 is very simple. You want to try out as many different things as humanly possible. What you want to do is you don't want to discover your wow factor, but you want to create it. Understand that anything can become a wow factor. Anything can become a valid extracurricular. It doesn't matter what the topic is. What matters is the degree to which you develop competence in that area. And then with that competence, you can utilize that as fuel for your essays, as fuel and strength for your application. So ultimately you want to be trying everything out and discovering that best wow factor. So the mindset shift I offer to you is really that anything can become a wow factor and anything can become an absolutely amazing wow factor. So get yourself out of this trap of trying to find the ideal wow factor. And you want to balance what I like to call the explore versus exploit conundrum. You want to be, in this case, exploring as much stuff as possible. This is your season of exploration. All right, so that was before grade 9. Your one goal was to try everything out as much as you possibly can. Now, from grade 9 to 10, it's very simple. Your goal in this time is to build the launch pad of your rocket. Okay, not the rocket itself, you're not shooting off or anything like that. You're building the launch pad by which you can then put your rocket on top. So during this time, your grades are not the highest priority, but your grades cannot be garbage. All right, your grades need to be somewhat good. But your one goal during this period of time is to not necessarily build ECs, but develop the skills and the systems you're going to need to build those extracurriculars. All right, you need to be asking yourself, what set of extracurriculars do I want to achieve by the time I get into my top university? And then what skills do I need to build and eventually achieve those ECs, those extracurriculars? Because ultimately your goal here at the end of the day is to build a stacked set of ECs. And the way you do that is by building the largest possible base you can, and then building the tallest building of the ECs on top of that. At this point, you want to be spending maybe 70% of your time exploiting the exploration you already did before grade 9. And then you want to be focusing on building the skills and then developing the extracurriculars that you truly need to succeed. So half of my extracurriculars were built in my grade 10 year. The other half were simply a derivative of the skills that I learned and built during my grade 9 and grade 10 year. So your focus should be on building the skills that you'll need to then create an amazing extracurricular in grade 11 and in grade 12. And the thing is, if you can start building those ECs in grade 9 and grade 10, you're already off to a great start. Like in my case, I had the JqR&x, which was this technology that I was developing and then I sold on Kickstarter. I also had the World Scholars Cup community here on this YouTube channel that I was building that got multiple tens of thousands of interactions. And then ultimately you want to be on track to achieving your wow factor goal. So at the beginning of grade 9, the first thing that I did that got me into my dream university was I spent maybe like a day drafting up my ideal 10 extracurriculars. In other words, what would be the best 10 ECs that I could possibly make if I was to achieve them? Like, what would be the 10 best things I could do, right? And I let my imagination go wild with this, but the entire goal was to draft out what would be the 10 best extracurriculars. That's number one. Number two is I made a 4-year plan to get there. All right, I made a 4-year plan to achieve those 10 ECs that I had drafted out. So the question is, if you're not in grade 9, maybe you're in grade 11, ask yourself, do you have a list of 10 ECs that you're going to achieve? And are these 10 ECs ambitious? Are they huge numbers? Are they things that you look at and you're like, wow, this is absolutely incredible? Because if they're not, that is a huge opportunity. You need to nail that down and you need to have a clear vision of where you're going, because the thing is, amazing things happen when you have clarity. So if you haven't done this, go back, do it right now. All right, so that was grade 9 to 10. Also make sure you have your SAT planned out, and also make sure you have a general list of which schools you want to go to, even if they're your reach schools. The biggest point is you want to develop clarity and you want to develop the skills that you'll need to execute on that clarity. Those are the big points. Next, we're entering the grade 11 to grade 11 first half period. All right, the biggest thing about grade 11 is that now you're building the rocket. All right, you have all the skills in place, you have all the disciplines, all the strategies, all the accumulation of grade 9 and 10 was building up the base that you're going to need to then build that tower. All right, and that tower in this case is the rocket engine itself. Understand that in grade 11, this is when grades really start to matter. All right, do not underestimate the power of grades in this period of time. You want to be going perfect to getting those grades. And really the trade-off that you want to be thinking about at all times is how can I get the highest grades with as little effort as possible? Because understand that every single person, everybody applying to top universities, they all have perfect grades. All right, they all have 4.8 GPAs, they all have perfect 45 scores, they all have 1600 SATs, they all have these top grades. So understand that the differentiating factor in today's admissions market is not the grades, but is your extracurriculars. That's what's going to differentiate you from everybody else. So you need to be spending all of your time, all of your attention on developing these ECs. But the thing is, and here's where the balancing act comes into place. And this is also why I think that developing the productivity skills, right? The mindset shifts, the high achievement tactics that you need is so much more important than most people give credit to. Because high school really is a balancing act between how much time do I allocate towards these grades and then how much time and attention do I allocate towards the ECs. And ideally, the best balance of these would be when you allocate as little time as possible to your grades and you still get perfect grades, and then you allocate as much time as you possibly can to your ECs, because the grades have an upper limit. Okay, after you get a 45 in the IB, you can't get a 46. Okay, you can't get anything above that. So grades have a limit, but the ECs, this has no limit, right? This is where you can just do some absolutely amazing things. Okay, and by amazing things, I mean you can beat your competitors in the university admissions market by 10 to 15 times with a better EC. All right, you don't get that same ROI with your grades. Right, let's say you apply to your top university and you get a 40, let's say you get a 42 and your friend gets a 43, right? The percentage there between the 42 and the 43, that's not 10x. But if you start a business and that business makes, let's say 100,000 by the time you finish grade 12, right? And your friend makes the same business or a similar business and that makes only like $1,000. Okay, the results difference in that you can showcase to your university admission counselor is not 5 or 10x, but it's 100x, right? That's where you get huge outcomes. So understand that you need to be allocating this as carefully as you possibly can and then spending all of your energy towards the ECs. So ideally, what typically happens, because grades are very important, okay? Let's not say that they're not. They're very important in this case, because if you don't have them, everything else falls. So you want to be spending, I would argue, to get perfect grades, maybe 70-30 EC. All right, 70% perfect grades, then 30% of your time on your ECs. And the reason why we're spending so much time on our grades at the beginning of grade 11 is because you can actually pre-study the majority of everything you need to know in grade 11 and grade 12 by the time semester 2 hits of grade 11. And the thing is, if you have all of your grade 12 content studied, at least to the point where you apply to university, that gives you a huge advantage, right? It gives you a huge advantage because by the time we get to IA season and extended essay season and all the other crap that happens in the beginning of grade 12, having all of that deep knowledge and understanding of the curriculum, meaning grades, is going to save you so much time and stress. So the point is, you want to be allocating more time at the beginning of grade 11 to truly understand and master as much of the future curriculum as you possibly can. If you haven't done so already, please make sure your SAT/ACT is done by this time. And then your number one priority, more than anything, is to actually set proper expectations. Okay, what I mean by this is that you want to be known as the productive student in the teacher environment. All right, when the teachers go and they have their weekly meeting, Does your name show up? Do they talk about you? Do they say, wow, I've had this kid, his name is Joaquin, he's just absolutely amazing, he's super productive. Do they say that stuff about you? Because teachers talk. Okay, understand that teachers talk. In fact, I remember walking down the aisle and I'm not gonna name who, but I saw two teachers talking, and they were talking about a student in my class who wasn't performing very well. And they were like, yeah, have you seen X student? Have you seen this student? Like, she hasn't been doing very well in my class, I've just noticed. Does that happen with you? Notice how they talk about the different students and they share notes. So if you're known as the student who's very productive, as soon as one teacher asks, they're like, hey, have you seen student Joaquin? And the teacher says, yeah, he's absolutely productive. He gets so much done. He's beast of nature when it comes to getting all these assignments done. If the teacher says that about you, that gives you a huge advantage, right? Because now you get known as that reputation. And then since humans are humans, right? Meaning that we think emotionally, meaning that we have biases inherent to us, whether we're teachers or not, right? We're humans at the end of the day. That teacher is going to start to favor you, is going to start to help you, going to start to boost up your predicted simply because they believe in you. And because of that, they're going to give you more resources to succeed. So do not underestimate the importance of making a very solid, good impression and a very solid emotional connection with your teachers. That's number one. That's why I like to call this setting expectations. And that should be your first priority. Making a very strong character so that the entire teacher community knows that you are in it to get perfect marks. That should be your number one priority at the beginning of grade 11. And how do you do that? You do that by getting perfect sevens. You do that by showing up in time. You do that by being respectful to your teachers. You do that by actually being engaged in class. And when that happens, you realize you fall into this positive upward spiral, okay? And then everything just feels like it's going good in class. That's where you want to be. And then as a bonus during this time, I also suggest you do strength training, maybe 4, 5, 6 times a week with the objective of bulking. I talked about this in my workout video that I've either released or is coming out soon. So check that one out because this will talk about exactly how to maintain and build muscle and become just massive and just good looking in grade 11 and grade 12 years. All right. So with that being said, we're now moving on to what will be the first of the 2 most intense periods of time in your high school life. This is in the first half to the end of your grade 11 year. Your number one priority during this time is to get perfect grades. All right, all of your attention needs to be allocated towards getting perfect grades. In fact, I would go as far as to say you should be spending maybe 90% of your time on getting perfect grades. And the reason why is because if you are to master your grades in this period of time, okay, in the first 2 months of your second semester of grade 11, if you're to master your grades, grade 12 becomes super easy. Everything becomes super easy after that, okay? And I would even suggest doing this earlier. If you can do this earlier, meaning at the beginning of grade 11, you can just pre-study absolutely everything. And like, if you could just somehow learn all the content in the IB before the IB even begins, that's just, you're cracked. Okay, you're cracked because that's how you break school, by the way, because you know everything before school even begins. That's how you break it. And the thing is, it's actually not that hard to pre-study this. I learned all of calculus by doing Professor Dave, like Dave Explains. If you go to his YouTube channel, Professor Dave Explains, all right, search up calculus. He has an entire course on calculus. I did that all in maybe, I don't know, like 2 days. I did that entire thing. And then I went in the question bank and I just started doing question bank questions as a machine. So the thing is, you want to study enough so that you can do past paper questions, and then you want to do as many past paper questions as possible. And if you do that for a week or 2 weeks of just machine past paper questions at the beginning of grade 11 when you have absolutely nothing to do, that's when you can develop a hugely strong base of everything you're going to learn in the future, and just school becomes so incredibly easy. This is how you break school. You also want to be building the foundation for your uni app. A lot of people come up and ask me, how do you have so much free time, or how did you have so much free time during the IB exam week? And the answer is that I built a huge pyramid, huge base at the beginning of and during my grade 11 year. So much so that by the time the IB exams came, I knew the entire question bank. I did not really need to study. It was just all already laid out. It was all there. So when you have that base, by the time studying came, I just didn't need to study because I already knew everything. So the last week, in fact, I remember like the few days before, I was just hanging out with my friends. It was my friend's birthday, actually. Sasha, if you're watching this, your birthday was, I believe, the day before the physics HL, like on May 2nd, the day before the physics HL exam. So that was a lot of fun. We had some sushi and just had a good time. And then I went with my girlfriend like 2 days before that. It was a good time. All right, the days before was a pretty good time. I called them slightly the gray days because no one was available, but I hanged out with my dog. I read a bunch of books, had a good time leading up to that. Long story short, people ask, how do you have so much free time? How were you able to sleep 10 hours? The thing is, you build a huge base. The IB is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't learn things the day before. You build a huge base by consistently doing as many past paper questions as possible in as long a period into the future as you possibly can. All right, so really your goal, number one during this period, is to get perfect grades. And there's a bunch of details I'm missing out, but if you want to see the full explanation of exactly how to do this, how to get perfect grades, how to break school, check it out by joining the Training Academy in the link down below. This is an exclusive Discord community of ultra high achieving students who want to get perfect 45 scores, get into their dream universities, and ultimately live a life of excellence. All right, you can do that. Join the link in the description down below and you'll meet other Grizzlies, other Cubs. We have tons of competitions, tons of Q&As, meetups with myself, meetups with other Ivy League and top performing university students. The value in this is absolutely insane. So if you're not in it already, please check it out. Link down below. So the next season is grade 11 summer, and the entire goal of this season is to complete your university application. All right, so number one, you want to pick your university list if you haven't done so already. And then number two, you want to be spending all of your time writing your uni app essays. Okay, so the typical proportion I would say is you want to spend about maybe 45 to 50% of your time writing essays, and then the remaining 40% of your times on your extracurricular, really making those as amazing as you possibly can. And then the other 10% just reviewing grades, setting up the subjects and understanding that you need to know in order to eventually get that perfect score at the end of your grade 12 year. All right, so just for some context, I ended up writing 35 essays during this period and I wrote 100 plus drafts. So my main choices were number one, the MNT program, number two, the MIT program, the Massachusetts Institute, number three, Stanford, and then number four was Harvard. So those were my four top universities. I ended up writing like 35 essays, 100 drafts. I also had a few others, Carnegie Mellon, Harvey Mudd, Franklin Olin, I believe was the other, and I had one more, which I don't exactly remember. But long story short, I wrote as many essays as I possibly could. And then finally, the last thing you want to do with your extracurriculars is you want to look at your list of ECs that you wrote in grade 9 and 10 and ask yourself, what am I missing? What do I need to do to bridge that gap between where I was or where I thought I'd be when I was in grade 9 and where I am right now? And what's missing between that? And then you want to focus in, not necessarily on trying to make the ECs better, meaning you spend all your time on it, but you want to focus on improving the presentation of those ECs. Okay, this is where a lot of students go wrong. They see that they can make their extracurriculars much better, and because of that, they spend all their time trying to do all this stuff that the admissions officer won't see at the end of the day. So what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what are the key things that the admission officer will see? What will they notice? What are the things that actually count? What are the tasks that move the needle? What are the tasks that make it possible for you to write the things you want to write on your Common App? And then do the least amount of work possible to make that happen, to make that presentation possible. Because a lot of students, they spend all their time on just back-end tasks that sure, maybe they help the business a little bit, but doesn't directly contribute to, let's say, making the business more sales. If you're presenting to the admission officer the amount of sales that your business made, your focus should not necessarily be on, let's say, retention or on churn. Your focus should be on maximizing sales, meaning your focus should be on the metric that the university admissions officer will see. So when it comes to filling the holes, you want to focus in on those metrics and then double down on really making them as extraordinary as possible. So here's a few habits I suggest you do during this period. Number one, research your university and then write the essays that you want to do. Do your university app in the essays. Number two is you want to polish your extracurriculars and utilize leverage habits, which I'll talk about in another video, to really maximize that. In other words, you want to have your ECs running in the background and then developing a team around that so that you have extraordinary extracurriculars. I explained that in another video. And then number three, you want to be doing the question bank maybe for like 30 minutes or an hour every single day in machine mode, just doing as many questions as possible. That way, you don't want to forget any of the concepts that you learned in the past year. Because the thing is, if you end up flanking out on those concepts, it's going to hurt you big by the time you get into your grade 12 year, because that's the time that is most critical. Okay, that's your golden goose opportunity, as I like to call it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've now entered the golden goose opportunity, which is the beginning of your grade 12 year. This is grind season. All right, so if you've been working out, bulking so far, this is when you go on a cut. So you maybe work out only 3 times a week and you do intermittent fasting. That way you have all of the time that you need to focus in on truly creating exceptional work. And what do I mean by exceptional work? You need to understand that the difference between doing something good and doing something exceptional or the best in the world is typically 10 times the amount of work. So work on your university app and then ask yourself, when is this good? And then when you reach that point, say, okay, I'm gonna need to spend 10 times as much time as I spent so far working on this in order for it to be amazing. And that's the standard that you set for yourself. So your entire goal during this period at the beginning of grade 12 is to make your university application as good as you humanly can. Make it the best possible, because the quality of the application here will determine whether or not you get into your top university. And most students don't realize how critical this point is, because this right here is your golden goose opportunity, right? If you had a golden goose that was able to spit out bunch of golden eggs, right? Let's just say theoretically you had a golden goose and it could spit out as many golden eggs as possible. This is not the time to look at the golden goose and say, all right, yeah, this spat out a few golden eggs, I'm not gonna try as hard. Absolutely not. This is the time where you get the golden goose and you tell it to keep spitting out as much as humanly possible. Because the thing is, in a month or so, the golden goose is gonna be gone and there's no more opportunity for it to spit out golden eggs. And when that point reaches, you want to have looked back and said, yes, I made the most out of that opportunity, right? I went all in and I got as much golden eggs as I possibly could. This is your period of time. This is the small period of time you have to truly maximize that golden goose. Okay, and the golden goose in this case is the quality of your application, the quality of your university application. And most students dramatically underestimate the amount of time that is required to make an absolutely spectacular application. So all of your time during the season should be spent on tweaking and making the application as good as you possibly can from the work you did over the summer. The goal here is to maintain the good grades you should have already been getting. The thing is, if you've done all the work to pre-study and you have that backlog of deep understanding in the concept, it should be pretty straightforward for you to get good grades because you already have that knowledge. The place where most students run into problems is that they don't have a deep understanding, so they need to learn things as they go in grade 12. That is a terrible idea and it's going to set you up for failure. And then number two, they don't have extracurriculars, so they try to do something super last minute. Like I remember someone who tried to make like a TED conference a month before. It was just a disaster. So just keep that in mind. And then the third thing they want to keep in mind is that you need to be spending all of your time on the golden goose, which is the university application. That is your golden goose. So I cannot stress how important this is. All of your time needs to be on making the application as good as possible. You need to be spending as little time as possible on your grades because remember, your attention is a finite resource, meaning that even if you spend a lot of time on your admissions and then a little bit of time on your grade, if your grades are worrying you and you're stressed about not getting perfect grades and your mind is somewhere else, you don't have the attention necessary to create something truly exceptional. That exceptional creation happens when you have all of your attention focused in, not on two things, not on three things, but on one thing, right? If you look at Steve Jobs when he created the iPhone, it was just the iPhone. Okay, he didn't create the iPhone, iPad, and Mac all at the same time. No, it was just the iPhone. And then it was just the iPad. It was one product at a time. And he realized that when you have the entire team focused in on only one thing, you can create a blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster, right? If you look at what Pixar did, they made only one blockbuster per year. They weren't trying to do 5, they were all focused in on one thing. So the lesson here, please, and I'm just stressing this because this is the most important thing that you could possibly do, is spend all of your time on your university application. Just make that absolutely spectacular. And that only happens if you've done all the preparation from before. Okay, if you already built the skill of ECs and now you're just factoring, like you have the leverage strategies and you're just milling that out. That's number one. Number two is you've already done the base grades from before. And then of course, number three, you just make the most out of this golden goose opportunity. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the final stage of our grade 12 high school journey. This is the celebration stage. Congratulations. You hopefully got accepted into your top university right now. You still have the IB exams though, but that shouldn't be a problem because you already spent all this time studying. In fact, the last few months of grade 12, it was the time I spent the least amount of time studying. Of the entire, you can ask any of my friends, you can ask my girlfriend at the time, I spent the least amount of time studying during this period of time. Why? Because I already had foundations that I needed in all the subject areas to truly excel in my exam. And that's how I got a perfect 45. So number one, I was going to the gym, really enjoying my lifestyle, working on becoming the best version of myself and other disciplines that I had neglected. This is the time to do that, all right? So now that you've gotten in, enjoy that, enjoy the fruits of your labor, enjoy the fact that you're a teenager, right? That you're in high school. This moment isn't gonna last forever. And there are some times myself that I wish I could go back and just spend another day having finished grade 12 and just feel how it's like. So long story short, I found that some of the best memories happened at the end of grade 12, where I was enjoying time with my friends, enjoying time with my family, really just enjoying time as a teenager. You don't get this opportunity ever again, so make the most out of it. And with that, Grizzlies and Cubs and Giga Grizzlies as well, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions at all, please leave them not in the comments down below, but in the community, Discord community down below. You can actually apply with the link in the description if you're interested in joining. It's the Training Academy. Students have gotten tons of results by staying consistent with the games, with the honor system that we have, with the entire supportive community that we built. We would love to have you there if you're not in there already. All right, so you can ask me any questions there. We also have an entire gaming system to gamify school. We also do one-on-ones with Ivy League students. People can talk to myself. By the way, I'm going to be posting my entire IB curriculum that I did in the community down below. So that's all my essays, all my IAs, my just everything. You can find that in there if you're interested. So long story short, go check it out, go apply. And until next time, stay grizzly. I'll see you in the next episode. Have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.